Hello and welcome to my channel. So I realized today I'm not gussied up in the way I normally try and be when I hop on here. No wigs, no lashes, a turban, and some opinions about Love is Blind. I wanted to make sure I got these out before we get to the next episodes next week. I just finished watching the latest installment, all 10. Well, actually, I watched the first part last week. I watched the second part a couple of hours ago. And y'all, this season, I don't care what anybody says. Everybody was like, oh, season 5 is not really doing it for me. I really liked more of season 4. And we all have our things we look at and we look for when it comes to shows, so it's whatever. But I feel like this season is so interesting because, I just feel like it's way more dramatic. Last season, yes, we had Marshall and Jackie and all of that, but I have one word for you, Uche. Like that's all I'm gonna say. So I wanted to just really quickly give some opinions. I'm excited about this video because I feel like this is the first time that I've talked about Love is Blind and I'm literally on board with everybody else. This is a time in my life where I'm not the contrarian, so I'm excited for me. Okay, let's talk about the first set of episodes. And I just really want to kind of compress everything that I observed in these first episodes with 5 quick points. I still believe the show is super irresponsible. It's just that the premise is so emotionally, like we can never be surprised. I feel like when people go on this show, well, there was one surprise, but I'll get to that. But when people go on this show and they bomb or a relationship doesn't work out, it falls apart in Mexico. Hell, it falls apart after they come out from behind after they come out of the pods. We can't be surprised because the premise of the show is irresponsible. I don't care what you say. It's not that love isn't blind, which I don't think it is, but it's that love cannot be truly felt and truly embarked upon in most cases in the type of simulation that they're in. It just can't. I know that you can build that emotional connection with somebody, you can, but it takes a very, very special and rare couple for you to build that connection. And the things that people are driven to say, the emotional highs they're supposed to be able to feel in a short amount of time, the decisions that they make based on those emotional highs, which can be very much fabricated by the environment that they're in, by the fact that they're trying to win on a show, it sets people up to make the wrong decision, to commit too soon to someone, to something that really might not be the best thing for them. This show is incredibly irresponsible. And also, I've said this before, if you were ever a person who was very feelings first in your dating endeavors and you had to learn against that, you had to learn not to go out and expect to fall in love with everyone just because you had one date. You had to learn to, give things time and let things progress. Seeing a show like this where people are encouraged to say, I love you after like 3 days of having dates with them behind a wall, it's for me personally, because I am a reformed nincompoop when it comes to dating, it's just incredibly triggering. And I can just see so many different, really easily formed toxic behaviors just from this simulation in general. So like I said, if you have couples that actually are successful here, I think we really need to be focused and happy for them instead of so surprised sometimes when things fall apart or things don't work out. It's like, of course it didn't work out. Like this is goofy. The show is goofy and the premise is irresponsible. When it comes to vulnerability, like the type of vulnerability they're trying to push in this show, they're trying to make sure people, tell their stories and their dark secrets and whatever. It's not about building a connection with somebody because you were so vulnerable. It's about discerning whether or not that person is the right person you can tell things to. So I'll use 2 examples from here. So the first one is Uche and Aaliyah. So right off the bat, he is such an interesting character to me, and I'm going to expand on him in a moment. But I will just say he's equal parts frustrating and also fascinating. I find it very frustrating that he responds to emotional situations as if he is in a courtroom. I know he's a lawyer by trade, but it's just like, yo, not now. And when Aaliyah said, hey, I cheated on someone and, I didn't tell them, so on and so forth, and he gave her the 3rd degree and he wouldn't let up, he wouldn't relent. I personally was like, that person sounds like a monster to be involved with. I would never want to date them. I would never want to be in a relationship with them because if you do make a mistake, if you do have a failing in some way, that's what they're going to meet you with first. It's not going to be the empathy first. It's going to be that first. And here's the thing. Nobody's telling you not to be a critical thinker. Nobody's telling you not to be logical. Nobody's telling you not to have darker feelings towards somebody you're involved with. But when you deal with them, especially in a situation like that, have kid hands, have softness, like lead with that first. And what Uche will do, and he does it a couple times in the show, is he'll lead with all this criticism and he'll cross-examine. I just want to get to the bottom of this. I just want to let you know how you disappointed me. And then after he does that, he'll sit back and he'll be like, that wasn't the right thing to do. I should have been softer to you. I should have been nicer. Will you forgive me? And it's like, okay, yeah, I can forgive you, but is this what you're going to do every time? It doesn't bode well for opening up about things. I think Uche needs to be with somebody who probably doesn't really have a past, because he's not the kind of person you can, at least how he was presented on the show, he's not the kind of person you could open up to about your feelings in certain ways, because he's going to make you feel every single bit of his disgust with you before he backs up and says, but you're human. And at that point, the damage has been done. It's so hurtful to open up to somebody and to be like, this is what I'm struggling with. And for that person to respond to you critically and to tear you down. And look, they might have those feelings, but if they actually want to stay in community with you and be restorative with you and treat you with love, then that's what they need to lead with first. They need to lead with love and not with judgment. But that's not what he does. And so in that case, it's like, if you're going to be vulnerable with somebody, please just know who you're being vulnerable with first, because I felt so badly for her in that moment, because he just would not let up. The second time that vulnerability really didn't work out is with Johnny and Izzy. Izzy, to me, strikes me as somebody who he's had when he was talking about his childhood, I was like, so what family are you going to be introducing this girl to, whoever you get engaged to? Because it doesn't sound like you really like your family, which is your prerogative. Things happen, but it sounds like you're actually trying to escape your family. Does your family know this? Because he does say, like, he grew up, couldn't have a Christmas tree, couldn't do this, couldn't do that, and so he wants to marry into another family so he can join their traditions. And so, yeah, when he was talking about his childhood and some of the things that he experienced, I was like, oh, damn. So I kind of understood why he then connected with Johnny. But what I didn't like was that he kept pushing, whether it was Johnny, whether it was Stacy, for people to open up with these feelings and to tell them how they felt and to be vulnerable with him and whatever. And so when Johnny was finally like, well, the only man I've ever loved died of an overdose, and he was, then I got married to a guy who was my rebound and, whatever. When Johnny said that, he completely recoiled. And he just was like, I'm not going to be able to deal with somebody who has that kind of a past. And so once again, you have someone who is encouraged to be vulnerable, not just by the experiment, but by the person that is talking to them. They reveal this dark secret about themselves. And instead of the person being like, okay, thank you, now we can really move on, they are not interested and they close the door in their face, or they respond with a lot of judgment. I did appreciate the way that Izzy responded to Johnny over what Uche did, but it was still just as hurtful. And so I was like, we talk all the time about vulnerability and about being open about what we feel, what we're struggling with, what we thought, etc. But we don't talk about making sure you're telling it to the right person and being discerning about who you share those feelings with, because everybody cannot hear what you've been struggling with. And that's with friendships, that's with relationships. And I did really like something that Uche said, once he had his moment of reflection. He said, if I want you to be honest, I need to create the environment where you feel comfortable telling me things. And that is so important. And, it's just a part of the human experience. We never know who we can actually say things to, because we're human beings. Like, we don't know. And I think they know even less in this environment. So yeah, vulnerability is so important, but discernment is even more so. And I love the way that Stacy plays the game. She was like, I'm sorry, but I'm only going to be able to give you XYZ. You'll find out the other stuff about me later on. The next thing that I picked up from just the first couple episodes was that if you're that scared, you're not ready. Aaliyah, my heart goes out to her because I feel like I understand her so much. While I've never cried that much in front of other people in my life, I do not cry in front of people. I will not. And, people often, they'll be like, God, you don't even cry. I won't, because once I've done that, once I've broken that wall and I've cried in front of you, I feel like I don't like it. I don't like it. But sometimes it happens. Okay, let me stop. Okay, it happens. But Aaliyah is definitely she's driven to tears a lot by this experiment. And one of the things she kept saying over and over again was, I'm just scared. I'm scared. I'm scared. And, you know, a lot of times we'll tell people like, okay, well, you know, how are you going to know if you don't push past that and really try? But sometimes being scared is your body and your mind's way of saying, hey, you're not ready yet. You're not ready. Like, this is too big for you at this moment. It's not something you need to do. Let's wait a while. This is not the time. So sometimes instead of trying to push past that I'm scared, we got to lean into it and just accept that it's not our time. Being scared means you're not ready. And I don't think Aaliyah was ready for this experience. And as a result, I think that it turned out for her the way that it did. Not in like a way that she did anything wrong, because if you know, you know, and I'm getting to it. But when we're not ready for something, life has a way of closing certain doors. You know, we'll go in and we'll try it and it'll just completely blow up in our face, where somebody else tries it and it works out for them, right? I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but I have. And I like to say sometimes you know the season of life you're in by the fruit that it yields. So I can say, okay, I'm getting out there, I'm going to date, or I'm getting out there, I'm going to find a job. But if it's not your time, the doors don't open. There's no grace. There's no, you know, it just feels really, really hard. There's obstacles, there's blockages. And I felt like with Aaliyah, even though I don't like what happened with her, and I'm getting to it, she wasn't ready. She wasn't ready to have a relationship to really, because she's very hurt, very scared. Things have happened. And the only thing that'll really soothe that is time. All right, speaking of Aaliyah and Uche, and I know there were other things going on, and I'm going to talk about these other people as well, but I just want to talk about this really quickly. So if you watched the show, then you know what happened with Aaliyah, Lydia, and Uche, and you know about the fact that Uche and Lydia had already dated before they went on the show. And they found out that they found out for the first time that each other was on the show when they were matched up for a date in the pod. Lydia recognized his voice, and they both decided, let's not try and start from scratch. Let's play the game. Now, me personally, if I was Aaliyah, who was trying to become friends with Lydia at that time, and who's fallen in love with Uche, and then Uche had gave her the third degree for not being honest and open, only to find out that there's two people who have already dated, and they dated recently, and they were extremely intimate. It looks like it wasn't just oh yeah, went on a couple dates. No, this woman knew your friend, she knew your dog, the producers honestly owe me financial compensation. Like, the producers of the show must do time for putting those two together, Uche and Lydia. The producers must do time. There's no way they thought like that should eliminate someone. You cannot go into this show and be like, Love is Blind, and have two people who have already dated. There's got to be a rule. There's got to be, and they 100% did it because they knew it would cause drama and they knew it would cause ratings. But if I was Aaliyah, I would like sue for emotional damage. What do you mean? What do you mean I walked into this situation and there's two people here who were already dating? And it makes you question, if I was her, it makes you question everything, especially like with Lydia. I don't know if, you know, she's trying to watch her to make sure that, because she knows Uche, so she's like, okay, I'm going to watch her, protect her, make sure that she gets what she wants. Or was it like, I don't know. It just seems sinister to me. And the fact that Uche didn't get it when Aaliyah decided to leave, because in their last conversation where him and Aaliyah talked about, you know, what's going on and how, you know, how that makes her feel, and how now, you know, before she was like, Lydia's my great friend, I love her so much, and she's gonna be the aunt to my kids one day. You know, Aaliyah's pouring her heart out about this, and OJ's like, yeah, well, you know, that was in the past, it doesn't matter. And then Aaliyah finds out it wasn't really the guy. Somebody got to pay me for my time, because I want this thing is rigged. Like, you should, like, what? That's crazy. The producers must do time. They must pay her. Somebody got to help her out. And when that was going on, I wrote down in my little notes, because I'm just like keeping notes as a show. I was watching it. When that was going on, I was like, Aaliyah got to leave. She got to go home. There's no way to, if you already went into this and you have your walls up, you're scared of being hurt, you're this, and that's what you find out, there's no reason to stay. You got to go. And the fact that Uche didn't understand, and I think I don't think she should have just left without telling him. I do think she should have said something, but I also know, like I said, I understand her. I know what it's like to be so overcome with emotion that you don't even know the words. You don't even have the words to really say, like, this is everything you did to hurt me. This is everything. Like, you don't even have the words, especially when he proved to be as closed off as he was to someone having an issue or wanting to be vulnerable with him. So, but yeah, that whole thing, when I found out about that, I mean, my jaw was on the floor. I could not believe. I was like, well, how is this possible? Wait, they set her up. They set up anybody that Uche might match with once Lydia got on the show. They set them up. And they did that for ratings, and they did that because they knew we'd be talking about it. But if I was in that position and I was that character, I was that cast member, somebody owed me something. Y'all, I'm leaving you with something. And the last little note that I left for myself at the end of the first 5 episodes was I wasn't rooting for anyone. This season is different because none of the couples were couples that I believed in and that I was rooting for. I really liked Stacy, like, right out of the gate, because I liked the fact that she didn't succumb to the, you know, let me emotionally vomit. Let me tell you all my deep, dark secrets. Let's connect differently while we're here. Give us a foundation. And then when we get out in the real world, we'll do. She's very, very methodical. And I was like, I respect you because you're staying in your own skin. I feel like, I've said this before, but I feel like a lot of times in the name of vulnerability, we exploit ourselves. You know, it's like, okay, but give them more. And you're in tears, and now the whole world has seen you. The whole world has heard your sob stories, and the whole world has judged them. And I love the fact that Stacey was like, nah, you're not getting, you know, I'm presenting this to you. You take it or leave it. And I think that's one of the reasons why Izzy picked her. I think while he does come from tumultuousness, so he tends to connect with people that also maybe have that energy, I think he kept saying mental stability is big. Mental stability is big. The reason why he liked Stacy was because she was not emotionally draining on him in any way. Like, yes, he wants that vulnerability, but he doesn't really want it because he doesn't want to have to go back to places where maybe he's felt like he has to fight to survive a very deeply tumultuous emotional situation. And while he might feel connected to people who have that same energy, he doesn't want to be in a relationship with it. He wants a different reality, a different emotional reality. So I understood why he made the choice he made. I was not rooting for Johnny in any way. If you watch the episodes, you know she does eventually end up with, I think his name is Chris. But I felt like I wasn't rooting for her in any way, but that's just me. I was not rooting for Milton and Lydia. I'm still not really, but that's because I feel like Lydia was just throwing herself at anybody. She wanted to win. When she was saying, Milton, I love you so much, just pouring it on thick, I was like, oh my God, the show is so irresponsible. So I wasn't rooting for Milton and Lydia. And I really was not rooting for JP and Taylor. I think initially, when they first met, I was like, oh, okay, maybe this might work. But the second they stepped out of those pods and Taylor said, he has a gap. So, maybe in the real world, I would never have talked to him. But, love is blind. And, I could tell, okay, she doesn't like him from the beginning. I was like, she doesn't like him. And he seemed not that excited about her, but I didn't know. Of course, once they went to Mexico, we knew how he felt about her. Yeah, from the beginning, I wasn't really rooting for any of the couples. Wasn't really excited. I am interested to see who else got engaged that we just didn't hear about. But after those first 5 episodes, those were my takeaways. And I was ready to go into the next part. So here's my opinions on the final episodes of this first chunk of season 5. First of all, let's talk about Mexico. So I have not talked about this here. I talked about it over on Patreon, but earlier this year, after Love is Blind season 4, I was like, I want to go to TRS Resorts. And Mother's Day, I took my mom to TRS Resorts in Cancun, and we had a little trip down there. And I was just so excited to be there because I was like, the cast was here. The cast was here. Now, I could not stay in the rooms that they stayed in. They stayed in some of the pricier rooms, but it's cool. And that's what I love about these shows. I love being introduced to new resorts and new travel opportunities, when I can take them. So the second they went to Mexico, I looked up this hotel. Here it is here. I think it's called the Grand Villa. They have a couple of properties across Mexico. And what you need to know is I do believe that the one they stayed at was something like $1,400 a night. That is not the cost of TRS. They are not that expensive. So yeah, they're definitely leveling up for the cast. That was probably the best part about the Mexico episodes for me. When it came to the couples, I thought Izzy and Stacey were really cute. I liked when Stacey pointed out that she was satisfied with Izzy's. We'll just leave that there. I liked how much they were laughing together. They seemed really playful. They had a lot of fun chemistry down there, so that was cool. Milton and Lydia, I didn't really believe that Lydia was into him. I was impressed all the time whenever they could get together and talk about like their geology and their rocks and their this and their that. I always thought that was cool because Lydia definitely doesn't come off as like an academic in any way, but I thought it was neat that they could like converse about that stuff. And I did feel like that she was momming him a little bit. I mean, she's 6 years older than him, which, here's my thing. I don't think anybody under the age of 25 should be on a dating show, especially a man. I don't think, especially a show that is set up for marriage. 28 and up should be the standard. When you're under that age, you're honestly in the most socially fertile time. There's so many people around you who are single. It might be hard, but it's not, let me go on a dating show and embarrass myself hard. It's not to that point. I was very confused by Taylor going on the show. And I think we would have to know more about each person's history and personal experience, like with relationships. But she is gorgeous. She's super young. She's a teacher, which tends to be an attractive profession for some people, because it means that you're like family oriented, et cetera, patient, whatever. But yeah, I couldn't see. I'm like, why would you need this show? This is a bit of an extreme for somebody in your position. And I really do feel that way. I feel like if you're under the age of like 28, the odds are in your favor. This is not, you don't have to do this. You don't have to go to these lengths. But anyway, yeah, Lydia and Milton, I did feel like their natural chemistry was kind of showing while they were in Mexico. So I felt better about them as a couple. I still didn't really believe them. I will say this about Lydia. You know what? No, I won't say that. I'll keep that to myself. But I did feel like she was momming him, but she's so much older than him. So it's to be expected. The tragedy of Mexico was, of course, JP and Taylor. That was the tragedy of Mexico. I feel like Taylor is one of the best examples of the strength and the intuition of a woman that we've had on this show. Remember, I've only watched two seasons, so what do I know? But the fact that she knew something was wrong with JP and she wouldn't let it go. She knew he wasn't communicating normally, and he tried to just, hey, it's all in your head, like we'll get better, it's all in your head. Oh, by the way, when she said that his breath stunk, what she says when they're like in the pool together for the first time, that actually would have been the moment that I gave the ring back, because dental hygiene, like poor dental care and bad breath, I can't do it. I could not marry you, and I want to leave immediately. But I remember she was like, she kissed him and she goes, oh, stinky breath. And then she kissed him again and she was like, it's okay, I probably have it too. Girl. Anyway, she knew something was wrong and she kept saying it and she kept saying it. And he was like, no, don't worry about it. And then, of course, makeup gate, right? They're in the bed together and he says, okay, here's what's wrong. When you came out, I didn't like your eyelashes. You had so much makeup on, you left it on my suit. Criticism over the way she looked, which again, look at her. Where does he get where? Also, she never brought up his American flag apparel, which is honestly one of the weirdest things I've ever seen an adult man do. And that would be any consistent themed pattern of clothing. That would be if he was insistent upon wearing Mickey Mouse on all his clothes. If he was consistent upon wearing, sailboats on everything. Anytime somebody's like, this is all I want to wear, it's questionable. It's like, oh, okay. But also him being that into America, a lot of people have pointed out that he probably has some very far right leaning, and we don't know, but he might have some very far right leaning political ideas. And that's probably kind of uncomfortable for a partner. Like, it depends on what Taylor wants, but she had so many opportunities, is my point, to attack him for his physical form. And she was determined, I believe, to develop a connection with him in spite of her misgivings about how he looked physically. She did not like his teeth. She's gonna let that go. She did not like, and she didn't say nothing about them clothes when she could have. She let that go. And so for him to just unleash on her like that and be like, I just don't like the eyelashes. I don't like the makeup. He acted like a small child that doesn't like when mommy gets dressed up to go out. Just threw a fit. She's not going to talk about him and his American flag cape. But if she puts on some fake eyelashes, he goes into cardiac arrest. I've heard this before about men and only wanting natural looks and natural makeup and whatever. And Taylor is a beautiful, beautiful girl. But that was mean. That was mean. It was mean. It was hypercritical. And it showed that he was not willing to give her the grace that she was willing to give him when it came to how she wanted to physically present herself. Because again, his clothes, his face, his teeth, his breath. But she was going to look over all of that, and he couldn't look over fake eyelashes. Disgusting. So I was really proud of her with the way that she listened to him. Then she said, I'm not staying in this room with you. I'm leaving. And then the next day when they met up, he talked about it and he was like, I think we can move on past this. And she said, actually, we can't. I'm going home. Here is your ring back. When I saw that she gave the ring back, I got chills because, of course, we all know about Ringgate from last season. Jackie wouldn't let the ring go. And, that's her prerogative. It's given to her by production. I felt like people got a little bit too emotionally invested in that ring. But that's how I felt. But I was so proud of her for giving it back because it's a symbol of the thing. There's no reason for me to still feel connected to you in any way. And that's something that I would do. Take the ring back, take anything else back that you've ever given me, take it all back. And I love that Taylor was like, I thought about this. This is what I want. Let's give each other a hug and I'm going home. Such an adult, so mature, does not need this show. I'm sorry. Like she is, hello. I don't get it. I did not get why she was there. And she set such a good example for how to handle conflict in that situation. I feel like Taylor and JP were this season's Zach and Irina. And instead of being weird towards him or talking about him or gossiping about him or trying to flirt with other cast members, the way Irina did, Taylor was like, it's not working out with me and him. It makes me uncomfortable. We're going to talk about it. We're going to figure it out. I'm going home. Forget it. And I respected her. I also respected her when she didn't show up back in Houston at the get-together they had there. I respected that too. Like she's not playing games. She's not here. I respect her. I really do. So let's leave Mexico now. Let's go back to Houston. I thought it was interesting meeting Stacey's family. I thought her and Izzy's altercation over the silverware was a little bit dramatic. He just didn't have the silverware, I understood her getting so upset with him about having a lost and found for people's jewelry. It's very that guy from You when he had all of those teeth and things. But people tend to do that. People tend to keep mementos. Just because Stacey doesn't do it doesn't mean it's the weirdest thing in the world. And I can also see him doing it like kind of as a trophy case, like, whatever. Or also not wanting necessarily to throw things away because they do have value. And I don't know, I would not have gotten that upset about it, but she did. I think that they resolved it decently, but it seemed like a lot of their conversations were things that were interesting. And her whole thing about money and her parents' divorce, like it was very clear that she was really holding a lot back in the pods. And again, she's strategic and I respect that about her. I respect her too. A conversation that it needed to happen, but I also was like rolling my eyes was when Uche and Aaliyah finally talked. Uche, once again, he's argumentative. Like he definitely went into the right field with law. And he was like, I just needed to talk to you. I needed to get some closure. Like, you didn't even write me a letter. You didn't do anything. And once again, I understand my girl Aaliyah. When he was describing how she was acting on social media, how she like blocked him and was doing all this stuff, I said, been there, girly. And it's usually because you just don't feel emotionally safe. And instead of communicating that with somebody, you disappear. So it's definitely not healthy. That's the best way to deal with things. And people used to make fun of me because I would write these dissertations when I no longer wanted to be either friends with somebody in a relationship, whatever. I would write messages long, but when Uche, it was like, you didn't even send me a letter. I was like, well, that never would have been my issue because I would have been in there. he would have had something. You know, I would rather do that. I would rather have that be my reputation. Like, hey, we stopped talking, but woo, I know why. Than have somebody feel like, oh, she just walked away and I'll never understand. Like in any situation where I've ended something or it's been ended, I always do take a moment to like explain and apologize, or, you know, I never ask for an apology, but I will say like, you know, this hurt me that you did this. I don't think we can go forward, et cetera, et cetera. Because I mean, he definitely was reacting the way people reacted when they get ghosted, when they, whatever. I just don't understand why he didn't understand why she would not have wanted to talk to him. Because honestly, at a certain point, it just turned into a horror show in there for her. It's already bad enough to find out that someone's ex, but someone's ex from not too long ago, and someone's ex who's been trying to be her friend, and he wasn't even going to tell her. Like, it got worse and worse and worse. And he could not understand why it would affect her. And that's his, I feel like, Achilles heel. Like, he's got such a great logical mind, but emotionally, he's just not there. The fact that they met up and talked, I didn't know how fruitful I thought it was going to be. I think it's good for the plot. But ultimately, I feel like she got steamrolled, you know, because he was like, I don't think this will work. Well, she could have told you that. She left early. Why bring her here to say this? But, you know, again, good for the plot. Other meetings that happened in that last episode that were decent. You had Milton meeting Lydia's family. I thought that was important because I think since the show came out, you know, Lydia was smart. Lydia was smart and JP was smart. They both cut their comments off on social media, which I think is, you have to do it. If you're going to be on a reality show and you know some shit went down that's going to make you look goofy, cut your comments off, limit your comments. Like, you probably, like, work it out with your therapist and the people that love you. You do not need all of social media running up in your ass about what you did wrong a year ago. You just don't need it. It's not healthy. It's not good. People should not have access to be able to talk to you crazy like that. Like, I don't care. I don't even like JP. Well, I don't like what he presented on the show. And I went to his social media and I saw that he was, he keeps his comments off, and I was like, good. And Lydia has an open profile, but apparently, according to things I've seen elsewhere online, she doesn't allow tags. Good. And she doesn't allow people who don't follow her that she doesn't follow back. Like, she's got those security things in place because you need that. Nobody needs to be cyberbullied over their behavior ever, honestly. Because it's just not the public's business the way that the public tries to make it their business, you know? So I really like the way, though, that when Lydia was with her family, she was allowed to represent herself. I also liked, I'm sorry, I was Team Lydia whenever Uche came back at that last gathering they had, you know, at that apartment, and Uche came back and he wanted to talk to her, and she told the camera, she was like, oh, y'all want to hear some tea? He cheated on me while we were together. So the fact that he sat up there and got mad at her, hypocrite. I was like, oh man, this just keeps going. This is messy. I was proud of her for walking out, because here's the thing. Nobody has to sit there and listen to you tear them down. If your point of talking to somebody, and you got to really check yourself before you have a conversation. Are you trying to have a restoration here, or do you want to rip this person apart? What is your point for actually speaking to this individual? I feel like every time Uche gets in front of somebody to talk to them, it was to rip them apart. It was to take them to task. It was to let them know what they had done wrong. Boy, bye. Nobody needs to hear that. I mean, people might need to hear it, but how do you know they don't already know? And after a while, after you've stated your case, do you want them to have an apology? Do you want to still be friends? What is it? I think there's a difference between asking someone why they did what they did, letting them explain, and then talking about whether or not you could restore the relationship, and then just basically using somebody as dart practice. You did this wrong. You did this wrong. You did this wrong. When that is happening, that person does not need to sit there and listen to that. I don't care what they did. There's no more point in back and forth. It's done. It's not healthy for you. It's not healthy for them. So I really respected Lydia when she got up and she walked out. She was like, I'm not doing this. And I also think that her telling us, because by the way, his whole thing about people sending her screenshots of, like, you know, or him screenshots of her looking at their stories, I was like, okay, let's be real here. So there are so many people. I know if somebody once who admitted to having a lurking profile, which a lot of people do. They have their public profile, then they have their other profile. But what did they do in their lurking profile? They went and saw what their guy that they were talking to, who he followed, who he might be dating, who he might be interested in, am I even his type? What's going on? Who is he? They did that so that they could get the social media intel about them without having to put themselves on Front Street. That is creepy, I guess, but a lot of people do it. A lot of people lurk. They have it. I'm not saying what she did was right, which, by the way, it also wasn't that wrong, like just wanting to know, okay, who's in his life, what's going on in their stories, what's happening. If he had said, she's messaging them, she is trying to be friends with them, she's reaching out to them, she's asking them questions. But no, he said, she's looking at my stories and it makes me uncomfortable. To me, I'm like, that's okay. It's fair to be kind of creeped out by that, but block her from your stories. Or they probably did. I feel like it is creepy behavior, but a lot of people are creeps and social media makes it easy. It doesn't make her a sociopath for doing it. Does that make sense? Like, it's creepy behavior, but in today's day and times, that's the stuff that people do to keep tabs on people, to get more intel. I don't do it because I'll tell you how petty I am. If I'm ever interested in anyone romantically, I don't want to see anybody else that he knows. I don't want to look at it, okay? And if I do see it, I'm definitely not looking at her stories. And also, who checks who looks at their stories? I don't check. I guess you can get notifications, but I never check. Like, if you message me because you saw my story, that's one thing, but I'm not going to go through and be like, okay, I'm not going to do that. But that's what people did in his life. I feel like he made it a bigger deal, but, I also feel like when you think that somebody might not be stable, everything they do is a really big deal. Their whole situation is really messy. I appreciate her, respect her for walking out and not having the conversation with him. When Milton went and sat down with him, I was like, Milton, what are you doing? What are you doing? Hey, nobody has to come into Uche's court. Like, why do you keep showing up? He's just there to argue. Let him argue with himself. Let him talk to the wall. Finally, the final couple I want to talk about that met up and communicated here. And I think the tide might turn as far as like how people think of Stacey, or it might not, I don't know. But when Izzy talked to Johnny, I felt like that was unnecessary. It was unnecessary. I feel like anytime Izzy talked to one of the other girls, when he pulled Lydia aside, that was unnecessary. When he pulled Johnny aside and just went in on her, that's unnecessary. It's so messy. Again, he does it for the plot. I feel like Stacey had a very adult reaction, like, hey, don't pull me into that. Don't compare me to her. Like, I'm not interested. It was very little boy of him, very teenager of him, and it was mean for no reason. Reality TV behavior is so extra. It's so extra for no reason. There was no reason for anybody who had beef with anybody in the pods, but they've come out, they're new couples, whatever. There was no reason for them to, I don't know, I didn't respect that conversation. I didn't want it to happen. It was unnecessary. So what do I think is going to happen finally? So glad you asked. I don't think any of these couples are getting married. None of them. I don't think Izzy and Stacey get married because I think that Izzy is not man enough for her. Stacey is developed. You cannot, I'm sorry, but it's just some people are going to be 50 steps ahead. And when it's the woman that's really far ahead, she's like, come on, guy, come on, let's go. And I don't think he's going to be able to catch up to her. And so I don't think they're going to get married. Lydia and Milton, Milton is too young. He's too young for this. And Lydia, she says she can laugh and she can joke and whatever. Ha ha, he likes Pokemon, he likes rocks, whatever. But at the end of the day, he's too young, in my opinion. And it's not going to happen. And we already know that the other couples broke up. I do think that maybe Johnny and Chris might get married, but it won't have anything to do with the show. But yeah, I do think we have people that get dressed up, they go to the wedding. I do think we have some people that are left at the altar, but what do I know? I could be completely wrong, and they could both get married and live happily ever after. We will see. Wow, 45 minutes of me talking about Love is Blind. I'm sorry, but I had to get these thoughts out. And I was so excited for me because I was like, wow, I might finally be on the same frequency with everybody else. Let's see. If you watched, please feel free to let me know what you thought about it. I will always be grateful that I decided to tune into this, especially to season 5. I do want to say, they really kind of covertly addressed all of the mistreatment allegations that people were putting on them after the first couple seasons with all the lawsuits and everything. And a lot of people pointed this out on social media. There's so many shots of them making breakfast. Here, have some water, working out, cooking. Look at all this food we provide. Netflix did that. They did all of that on purpose. And I do think, we'll find out sooner or later whether or not this cast feels that they were treated better, but hopefully there were some improvements made there. Feel free to tell me what your feelings were about these episodes. I am excited to hear it. And as always, thanks for watching.